Welcome to 40-Yard Dash, the video version. Week 3 is in the books, and we have coaching movement. Kind of a throwback to a couple of years ago when coaches got fired in September because of NIL concerns and or house settlement money saving. There wasn't much of that going on the last couple of seasons. But with 3 weeks in and really, really bad starts at UCLA and Virginia Tech, plugs have been pulled on Deshaun Foster at UCLA and on Brent Pry at Virginia Tech. Pry probably should have gone after last season. Foster never should have been hired. Those were mistakes made by the administration, and now they will try to recoup. Are they good jobs? That's the first question. Well, they're not bad by any stretch, but they're also not plum jobs. They're not the best in their league. They are not among the best in the country. UCLA does have the privilege of Big Ten membership, and it sits on a motherlode of talent in the area, but it also shares that area with USC and anybody else who feels like they can come marching in to recruit Southern California, which is a lot of people. UCLA not exactly flush with cash, not a real, athletic program first sort of university. They do well in a lot of sports, but they don't throw a ton of money at the process. So I still think it's a job where you can attract very good candidates. I really like Will Stein, the offensive coordinator at Oregon, but I suspect after hiring someone without head coaching experience and having that fail, that's usually when universities go the other direction and look for somebody who does have experience. There's been some discussion about some coaches maybe trying to jump out of the Big 12 for that job, specifically Kalani Sitake at BYU, maybe Dave Aranda at Baylor. I'm not sure whether, even though it's a step up from the Big 12 to the Big 10 in terms of money, is it a step up in being able to win? I don't think so. I'd rather be in a league where you can win championships and have playoff access as opposed to being the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th best program, which is kind of where UCLA is living right now in the Big Ten. Person I would look at there possibly for this job, I think, is Jonathan Smith, the Michigan State coach, Southern California native, was successful in the old Pac-12, recruited the West Coast, won at a hard job at Oregon State. He's at Michigan State now. Maybe he wouldn't want to leave Michigan State, but I would inquire. I think that would be a good place to start if I were UCLA. As for Virginia Tech, pluses and minuses there. Some really good tradition, great fan base, great support. The NIL support we think is going to get better now that they've realized they're behind and they have to make inroads in that area. But a good natural recruiting area in the state of Virginia. One of the things Brent Pry and others did wrong there, Justin Fuente, was to not recruit the state very well. Let a lot of good 3-star caliber players go. And guess what? They went to James Madison and now to Indiana, and they're playing great for Curt Cignetti. Some misses there, but if you can recruit Tidewater and elsewhere around that state and through the DMV area, you can win at Virginia Tech. The danger there, the uneven revenue distribution in the ACC, which creates a natural advantage for some of your competitors there, specifically Florida State and Clemson, probably throw Miami in there. And so you're fighting uphill from that standpoint. But again, much like I would view the Big 12, the ACC, it's easier to get into the playoff. Maybe not as many bids, but a league that can be winnable or at least get into the top 2. So if I were Virginia Tech, could you get John Sumrall from Tulane? He's going to be well in demand. I'm not sure you could get him, but I think he's worth a try. Bob Chesney there in the backyard at James Madison, off to a very good start replacing Cignetti there. Or maybe a complete counter program from a strategic standpoint, and Jeff Monken from West Point, from the military academy. Although you'd have to convince Jeff that NIL's part of the game and he would have to play ball that way. Army doesn't have to. But a few options there. The coaching carousel's off and running, and we're going to follow that obviously very closely for the rest of the season. All right, second quarter, let's talk about a couple of the big results from over the weekend and an area that loomed large in both of them. Dramatic, exciting games between ranked teams that came down to special teams plays. I'm talking about Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and I'm talking about Georgia, Tennessee. I was in South Bend for the night game between the Aggies and the Fighting Irish. Wild back and forth shootout, tons of big plays. Not really what was expected and not really what had been the history between Marcus Freeman and Mike Elko. But that's what we got, is I think Notre Dame's defense has really struggled so far this season. The coordinator change from Al Golden to Chris Ash is not working well. But Notre Dame could at the very worst have been into overtime if they hadn't dropped an extra point snap. Tyler Buckner, veteran player, had the ball go right through his hands. They don't get an extra point off. They end up losing by a point in the final seconds. Little plays like that make a big difference. Obviously, in Tennessee and Georgia, excellent game. And if I come Tennessee, I come into that thinking, we're fine. We are good. Notre Dame, not so much. You're in playoff trouble at 0-2 and with a lack of quality games ahead. But if you're Tennessee, wow, the big play offense is back. Joey Aguilar looks great at quarterback. Chris Brazzell, rising star at wide receiver. Kudos to Georgia for making the plays to come back in the game and then ultimately to win it. Gunnar Stockton, there have been a lot of concerns about him at quarterback. He came through fantastically. But again, this one, Tennessee has the chance to win the game with a field goal. First thing they do, illegal procedure, false start on the line, move it back 5 yards, put a little more doubt into the kicker's mind, and then he misses badly on a relatively short field goal. You lose in overtime. Very tough way to go. You know, again, coaches spend a lot of time on special teams, and there's a reason. We tend to overlook it, gloss over it, and not pay that much attention to who the snapper is, who the holder is, those sorts of things. It can loom large. The small things do make a difference by the end of those games. So big results there. We'll see how much that impacts the playoff race going forward, both for Tennessee and Georgia and for Notre Dame and Texas A&M. Third quarter, we are 25% of the way into the regular season. Time to probably check in on the Heisman Trophy race. And oh my gosh, what has happened? Almost everybody we were touting before the season is not off to a great start. Time to rewrite. Arch Manning, a lot of hype, hasn't lived up to it by any stretch so far. Not giving up on Arch, but difficult start for him at Texas. Drew Aller has been pedestrian at Penn State. They haven't needed him to be any more than pedestrian. They've rolled over 3 outmanned opponents, but when the Oregon game comes in 2 weeks, he better be ready to step up, and then we can more properly appraise him perhaps as a Heisman candidate. Cade Klubnik at Clemson, no thank you. Clemson's struggling badly on offense, and he's part and parcel of it. Sam Levitt at Arizona State, not putting up good numbers at all. They've also lost a game already. Lenora Sellers, South Carolina, got injured in the last game, and they took a loss. Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver at Ohio State. I think this is a guy who could be around for the long haul. Just had a bad first game, dropped some passes, and didn't do much against Texas. He put up huge numbers in the next 2 games against overmatched opponents, but he's too good a player to not end up having a great season on a very good team. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. Tigers are undefeated. They're doing it with defense. Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame. We touched on Notre Dame in the second quarter. They're 0-2, and Love either hasn't gotten the ball enough or hasn't done enough with it. So time to look elsewhere. Time to look at fresh names, right? There's plenty of them, and that's kind of the fun of this, is discovering things, letting the cake bake a little bit and then seeing who's going to rise. And you can look at John Mateer at Oklahoma. Absolutely. You could look at Tommy Castellanos at Florida State. But a couple of guys who really have, I think, flashed that, not necessarily unexpectedly, but in a manner that really catches your eye. One is Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. Vandy is 3-0. And Vandy is not just 3-0, but an impressive, dominant 3-0. They pounded South Carolina on the road. They pounded Virginia Tech on the road. Pavia is absolutely the engine driving that program right now. Gritty, charismatic, cocky quarterback. His numbers are not overwhelming, but he is a dual threat player who makes them what they are. And then in terms of just statistical impressiveness, Mario Craver, wide receiver at Texas A&M, little guy, transferred from Mississippi State, 5'10", 165, can burn. Fast as can be, and he just lit up Notre Dame. 207 receiving yards in that game. He's been over 100 every game this season. He leads the nation in receiving yards. He's a big play waiting to happen. So wide open at this point, which is fine. No problem. We'll see who emerges as we get later into September and on into October in the Heisman race. Fourth quarter of the dash. Let's look at some games to watch this weekend, and let's start with a game that has never mattered. They've played a lot of times, and they have never both been good at the same time. I'm talking about Illinois and Indiana. Number 9 Illini going to visit the number 19 Hoosiers in Bloomington Saturday. I'm going to be at that game, and the answer is October 28th, 1950. The question is, have these teams ever met when they were both ranked? And that's when, 75 years ago. That's the only time. That tells you about the peaks and valleys, mostly valleys, that these two programs have traveled through. But I think they're both really good teams this year. They have been dominant. They haven't really played great schedules, but Illinois did win at Duke by 26 points. Indiana's played no one. But I think this is shaping up to be a really good and important game. In terms of the pecking order in the Big Ten, who's settling in there maybe behind Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon for that fourth spot. And the Hoosiers were a controversial inclusion in last year's playoff. I thought they deserved to be in. And I say watch out for them Saturday at home there as we get the rare time when the nation's eyes will turn to a game between these two teams. Other game of note is a noon kickoff Eastern, 10 a.m. Rocky Mountain time. Texas Tech at Utah. Number 17 Red Raiders, number 16 Utes. Winner of this perhaps goes to the head of the class in the Big 12. Wide open league, lots still to happen there, but they've both been very impressive to start here. This is the big Texas Tech NIL revenue experiment, where they have thrown a ton of money at football competitiveness. They signed a lot of power conference level players, SEC level, Big Ten level guys, and brought them in for this year. They're 3-0, but they haven't played anyone yet. Do they have what it takes to go beat a Utah team that, other than last year's blip, generally speaking, is in the hunt for whatever conference championship they're playing in? They made a great pickup in quarterback Devin Dampier from New Mexico, brought along his offensive coordinator as well, and they are a much more explosive team than they have been. So those two games kind of highlight the schedule, but there's some other teams that are undefeated that still have something to prove, in my opinion. Michigan at Nebraska. Cornhuskers are undefeated, but other than a de facto home game against Cincinnati that was very close, haven't played anybody. Do the Cornhuskers have what it takes to be a competitor in the Big Ten? Michigan State at USC, both unbeaten, both relatively unchallenged. Michigan State had a close game against Boston College. USC won on the road against Purdue. Who's ready to step up there in the Coliseum in that game? And then Iowa at Rutgers, another Big Ten game there. Rutgers is 3-0, but they're 2-0 against the MAC and 1-0 against the FCS. So talk about a team that hadn't played anybody yet. That would be the Scarlet Knights going up against an Iowa team that, shockingly, struggling offensively, but pretty darn good defense as well. Then one other game I was interested in, Arkansas at Memphis. Razorbacks coming off a tough loss at Mississippi, have to go on the road again against a neighborhood rival of sorts. They don't play a lot, but believe me, in the city of Memphis, there's a lot of Arkansas fans and graduates, and they jaw quite a bit with Memphis fans and graduates. So bragging rights on the line there. Tigers are undefeated, but again, fall in the category, not much challenge so far. If they get this win, they jump very much into that college football playoff group of 6 contender ranks. So it's not a super marquee week of games, but there's always interest. Check them out, enjoy it, and thanks for reading the 40-Yard Dash.